So we began the day in a rather jolting way. Sometime between 7 and 7:30 a.m., we received various reports, not just one, a number of reports directed to the school and to police agencies regarding an individual, a male, who was riding an all-terrain vehicle with what appeared to be a long rifle strapped to his back, with reasonably accurate descriptions of what he looked like and what he was wearing. 2 points of concern. Number one, he was riding this vehicle in an area fairly close to South Dade Senior High School. Secondly, the clothing that he was wearing was described as matching the uniform colors of students at South Dade Senior High School. Those were two huge red flags that could not be ignored. Obviously, the school was placed under lockdown. When that happens, it does not initiate only the response from our school board police department, it actually involves the call out to other law enforcement agencies to that location. That is part of the new protocols post-Parkland. Seamless, immediate communication with other law enforcement entities regardless of jurisdiction. It happened today. The next point is that even before this was happening, we already had police at South Dade Senior High School as part of our board's decision a number of years ago, fueled also with state funding, but also the referendum investment in our community. We've been able to deploy a certified professional law enforcement entity to every single school in Miami-Dade. That's public schools as well as charter schools. And there was a uniformed police officer on site. After an exhaustive search of the school, which I have to admit is emotionally jarring to the students, the parents. Nobody wants to go through that, but unfortunately it is indispensable. If there was a threat described in fairly accurate detail, there was some degree of possible assumption that this individual, if in fact was a student at South Dade, would have gone into school. So we could not take any chances. This is one of those where, in an overabundance of caution and following the strictest response protocols, you do what you have to do. So we conducted the search, and the search was conducted not only by school board police, but also by county police entities, as well as a number of other agencies who participate in this effort. It was declared that the school was safe, that in fact there was no intruder in the school, and there was no student in a school who had carried a firearm into that protected environment. So we lifted the lockdown, and we did see hundreds of parents, regardless of the constant communication via social media and direct calls and text messages to the parents. It is a moment of great uneasiness, and sometimes it is hard to cope with the emotional disturbance that you go through as you navigate this very awful event. And a lot of parents did come to the school first into a designated area following protocol, and then they were allowed onto the school to in fact connect with their children if they wanted to, even though we strongly recommended that students remain in school, for the school was safe. Well, it should have ended there. It could have ended there. Maybe somebody saw something that wasn't real. But what we are doing here today is in fact saying that the system in place is working. The see something, say something. Do not assume that what you saw is not necessarily a threat to the community, the schools. In fact, was something that could not be ignored. For in fact, there was an individual, a man, on an all-terrain vehicle with an AR-15 strapped to his back in close proximity to South Dade. So school board police officials, detectives, scoured the surrounding area around South Dade Senior High School. And within about an hour and a half of the lockdown being lifted, they identified a suspect who matched the description provided via the calls made to the school and to the police agencies. He was interviewed, he confessed, the AR-15 was apprehended, and in fact it appears that this was the result of bravado and perhaps a display of retribution specific to a previous encounter between this individual and someone else in the neighborhood. This was not a student. This was a 22-year-old man with no association or affiliation to the school itself. But it caused a great deal of disruption to the school environment. He was detained, arrested, and charged. With that said, let me take a moment to thank our Chief of Police, Edwin Lopez, and the men and women who very quickly went into the neighborhood to try to ascertain whether or not there was a threat, and whether or not the threat that presented itself possibly this morning would continue into the day or even tomorrow, and to validate or deny the witness accounts that we had received. So I want to commend the detectives and the leadership, the command leadership of our police department who are here with us today for their swift and effective work that led to the apprehension of this individual who brazenly was displaying an AR-15, the same weapon that was used to cause terrible harm in Parkland around a high school. Unacceptable. And for that reckless act, there ought to be consequences, and the consequences began shortly after that lockdown was lifted. So it was inconvenient for parents. But I tell you one thing, we did the right thing, we made the right call, took the right precautionary steps, and in the end, thanks to these brave men and women, we apprehended the individual. If there's a silver lining here is we are able to send a strong message to the community that your voice matters. We were not out there in the streets, but it was the voice of adults and students relaying what they had seen that possibly averted a terrible situation. Let the message to the community be, people are watching. It's not just our security cameras, our police officers, the community itself is watching, and I think the community is fed up with some of the insanity we see, and they want it stopped. And they made the right call and calls. We took the right steps that culminated in the arrest of this individual. Chief Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. First and foremost, I want to thank the superintendent for allowing us and providing us the personnel to deal with these type of incidents, not only inside our schools, but the personnel to deal with them surrounding our school community. As a school police agency, when we get dispatched to a critical incident, we are not in the business of comfort. At that time, we are in the business to maintain a safe and a secure environment for our students, for our staff, and for the parents that are rushing to the school during a critical incident to see if their loved ones are in good condition. It's very important for me to point out today that because of the collaboration that we've established in a post-Parkland school policing era with the Miami-Dade Police Department and other smaller agencies like the Homestead Police Department and even state and federal agencies, we are able to immediately saturate an area around the school and deploy the necessary resources within the school community to ensure that our students are safe. Today was a prime example of agencies working together, collaborating, communicating, coupled with the experience of a detective team that we have internally here at the school district that possesses the skills and abilities to uniquely investigate cases in a school community and in a school setting. It takes a unique and a special law enforcement officer to work with students in this era. And we are equipped here with the team behind me that possesses those skills and not only is able to build rapport with students, but also enforce action when needed. Today's example is that many times what we deal with in a school community is not necessarily acts committed by students. Individuals in the community that have no affiliation to our schools or to our students or our staff, but may pose a threat to our school community. With the advancements of technology, we were able today, through our police command center, which monitors over 18,000 cameras on a daily basis, to immediately place digital eyes and observe this incident unfold. We were able to communicate information in a timely manner to the law enforcement personnel on the scene and allocate resources as needed. Today's a stark reminder that our job is not only to ensure the safety of the students and staff in a school, but also assist with providing the same security measures in the school community and as students walk to school and safe passages after school as well. Thank you.
You want to recognize some folks from the front?
Absolutely. I want to start off by recognizing Major Carlos Fernandez and Commander Montoya Jackson, who oversee our General Investigations Unit. These are two individuals that have over 40 years of law enforcement experience working specifically with our cops, with our students and staff in the fourth largest school district in the country, and now they're the top leading investigative team in the United States. I also want to highlight primarily Detective J.T. Messenger, who has 25 years of service with the Miami-Dade Schools Police. After Parkland, one of the 300 almost officers that we've hired has been his son as well, who goes by the same name and is following the same footsteps of his father, and has solved a multitude of cases for us. I want to at this time invite him to the microphone to say a few words.
Thank you. I'd like to reiterate what Mr. Superintendent and the Chief of Police said. We're only as good as the community makes us. And the fact that this courageous parent that came forward to us to share information, to help us with a lead to be able to follow this up was outstanding. So I tip my hat to that parent. And, as a parent, it warms my heart to know that, like the superintendent said, the community is fed up and the community is helping. And we really appreciate that from the investigative standpoint. Thank you.
One last thing I'll say is that, timing is everything. We spent, as a school system, 2 days. I personally attended part of a convening hosted by the United States Secret Service, which began the day before yesterday and culminated yesterday. And the U.S. Secret Service was presenting a detailed report on the psychology and the commonality of personality and lives and interactions between students who have committed atrocities, tragedies like the one we witnessed in Parkland, in Columbine, Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, and beyond. And there was a lot of good learning there. We had the chiefs of police from Broward, Palm Beach, from Miami-Dade. We had psychologists, we had mental health professionals. But the most important conversations I had, which came directly to my mind when I received the call this morning around 7:30, were the conversations I had with Max Schachter and Ryan Petty. These were parents of children who lost their lives in Parkland. As I got the call this morning, my mind immediately drifted to that conversation, because one of the things we discussed was exactly what happened today. No matter how small, some of the issues that are detected in the community, whether it is in school or outside of school, must not be ignored. And this was one of those cases. I do not know exactly what the intention of this individual was, but it is not rational, reasonable, or acceptable that during a time that students are walking and being transported to school, within blocks of proximity to the school, you would have someone on an all-terrain vehicle with an AR-15. Too stark a reminder to what recently happened across the country and certainly here in our South Florida community. So once again, commendations and respect to our police department. And I'll entertain some questions or go right into Spanish. Yes?
Sure. The suspect was detained approximately 2 blocks away from the school in a residence. We have the arrest form that we can provide.
This tip from the parent that you were mentioning, was that a tip that led to the suspect, or a tip that started the process with responding to a man seen running into the gun?
Well, we received a multitude of tips in the beginning of the morning that led us to eventually placing the school in lockdown and conducting the investigation. That same information that was provided is what ultimately led to the arrest of the subject.
So there wasn't another call afterwards saying we just saw this individual. It was actually detective.
Was it students and adults?
Both.
There's video that some parents took from inside the school with officers running around with guns. That's obviously going to be going around online. Can you just speak to that, why that was necessary for you guys?
Absolutely. During critical incidents, like I highlighted earlier, unfortunately, comfort is not the number one choice that comes in the words. We're obviously there to serve our purpose. We know the mere fact of having law enforcement in schools can cause attention because a law enforcement officer may have to take swift and immediate action, and today was a specific case. Our officers, coupled with other officers from other agencies, conducted a full sweep of the school, checking bathrooms, hallways, the rooftops, going class by class. Yes, we understand, and we're very sensitive to certain classrooms, especially students with special needs and things of that nature. But we are there on a mission, and the primary mission is the safety and security of kids. So we do understand that it could be very a hectic situation, and students may be impacted. That's why the district always provides crisis counselors immediately after a critical incident, which are deployed to the school today and over the next few days to ensure that those needs are being met to that student population.
And that's an important point, because obviously, even though the school was safe, the perimeter of the school was never violated. There was never a gunman inside the school, but we could not rule that out without having the police presence. So you go through a set of protocols which are really well specified in our own manuals, but also based on state recommendations post-Parkland. You don't have any other choice. Unfortunately, that's the reality we live in today. There is no such thing as making an announcement for the possible gunman that's in a school to present himself to the office. You have to go in and exhaustively search the school. And what Chief said is important. And that's why I say it is emotionally jolting, no matter what. And it should not be happening in any school in America. It shouldn't happen in a mall or a movie theater. The sad thing is, it does happen. So you have to prepare for it. You have to have partnerships and protocols and communication to lead the search of the school, to neutralize the potential threat if there's one, to evacuate as quickly as possible, to reduce the time of response should in fact there be an assailant on campus. And that is why in the aftermath we provide crisis counseling to the students and the staff, because it is an emotionally jolting experience, even though students and the staff were in fact safe.
The investigating team was schools or
Miami-Dade Schools Police.
Correct. Anything else?